net taxes and accrued salary, all this other stuff. It's not important. What's important is cash flow. So the way this ties out, and I guess now's a good time to say this, we're looking for investors to do I'm going to hold you accountable for your first year financial statements. What you think is going to happen in the next 12 months. I'm going to make you look out 3 years so I can tell that you've thought about long-term planning and the size of the market. But I'm really going to hold you accountable for those first 12 months because things change. But you have to have a cash flow statement and an income statement that's going to go out 3 years so that you can tell that you're going to either get enough money in now or get enough money in now and a second raise later, and then go from there. You'll be able to get profitable so that you can not have to raise money. Because each time you raise money, so if I go in and I give you $100,000 and 9 of my buddies give you $100,000 and we give you $1 million, if you're going to have to raise $5 million more at some point in time, I'm going to get diluted. So back into that equation of how do I make 10x my money? If I own a 30-year company and you just sell another half to somebody else, now I only own, what's a half of a third? 17%-ish? Yeah, 16.5%. So all of a sudden that $30 million sales got to go up to $60 million sales to get my 10x return. So this whole thing plays out in terms of cash flow. You show your cash flow, show how much you need, ask for that money either now or later so that everybody's online and you know where you're at. Questions? Yes, sir?
Post-check, when you send Billy and Susie on their way with your money, what's the relationship like? In terms of, is it really case dependent depending on the company, or do you have like a certain protocol in terms of how that works, outside of just the number side?
It's a great question. The mantra inside of the Pasadena Angels is it's the more than the money, which I don't know what the hell that means, but okay. Yeah, it is. We're looking for entrepreneurs that are early stage enough that need our help as well. So this is a whole other topic, but when you're looking for investors, you're looking for probably 3 things. You're looking for somebody to write a check. That's probably the easiest part of it. You're also looking for somebody to be able to help you generate revenue. If what business do you have?
Software development.
Software development. Who do you sell to?
Regular consumers.
Regular consumers. If I told you one of the guys in the Pasadena Angels used to be on the board of directors of Amazon and could open that up for you, would that be enticing? Yeah,
sure.
So absolutely. I'm just making that up, but.
Put me up here and then
I know. So what you're looking for is somebody to help you generate revenue. If that guy can open some doors and get you in and get your products placed, a lot of consumer products are looking. The typical consumer product in Los Angeles that we see a lot of drink companies and a lot of other things. The first thing you try and do is you get into Whole Foods and to Trader Joe's. They have a very liberal policy for early stage companies, one-off products, and then you try and get into Costco. And once you're in Costco, Whole Foods, and Trader Joe's, then you can probably make the jump to Walmart. But you don't want to make that jump to Walmart too soon because now you got to be in 10,000 doors, and you need a ton of capital to do that. And that's a different stage of capital. That's not angel capital. That's either VC or private equity. But anyway.
Really cool the way you put that.
I'm sorry?
I said that was really cool the way you laid that out.
Oh, thank you.
The Costco, Whole Foods.
Yeah. Yeah, it happens a lot, and it's about them decreasing their risk and scaling, and they can do things. I will say that Walmart's got better over probably the last 10 years. They used to drive their suppliers out of business with their very, very harsh terms, and they can. But what they realized is they were driving their suppliers out of business, and you don't want to do that over time. You want to nurture that relationship.
Is that hence great value?
Yeah.
Their product line?
Absolutely. So one thing, write a check. Second thing is create the revenue, help create the revenue. And the third thing is help go for that exit. When we start investing, we should be able to say, all right, you're in software development. What if one of the guys in the Pasadena Angels used to work for Microsoft, and he happens to know the M&A director over there? They're going to start hooking you up to that early on. So the relationship is more about developing that long-term goal of getting our 10x return. Back to Eric's point, if you empathize with the investor and say, look, I know this guy is a greedy son of a bitch capitalist and he wants 10 times his money. That's okay, let's figure out how to get him that. Because if you can get, you're writing down that greedy capitalist thing? If you can get that 10x return for him, everybody's going to be happy. And our relationship is generally, okay, so the Pasadena Angels don't invest. The Pasadena Angels as a group has never written a check. There's no Pasadena Angels check that's ever flowed to an entrepreneur. It's all individual investors. So I'm writing a check. Every individual investor is writing a check. That's one of the bad things is all of a sudden you have 30 investors in your hip pocket, right? 30 is a lot to manage. It's a pain in the butt. And so what we try and do generally is put a person on the board who's our conduit back to the other investors. So I may be on your board and we communicate, and then instead of questions going directly to you, they should come to me first, and then if I can't answer them, we'll talk and then we'll get back to you. But that's the relationship. Does that make sense?
Yep, absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Big one.
Follow up on that a teeny bit and kind of duplicate what you just said. One of the things that happens is the investors invest on what they know. And what you find out is who knows your space then. And when they know your space, they actually already have those contacts that he was talking about. I went in with a hospitality industry proposal and found out there's people that actually have been in the hospitality industry, had connections. That makes them more interested actually in investing in you because they know if they invest in you, they can make those connections and make that work. So it's not just a blind statement on his part that he knew someone from Amazon or something like that. That's what those guys are there for. That's part of their currency.
Sure.
It's and it's extremely helpful for me because I come out of a tech background and implementation software, designing products and stuff like that. I'm okay at that. There's guys in this group. There's 100 guys, and a guy will stand up. We heard a pitch for guys putting sensors into soil at the root of grapevines to make wine. And when you're talking about high volume or value grapes, they're incredibly expensive. And so they put these sensors in there, and at each base of each one, and then the sensors relay back through Zigbee or Bluetooth what the soil content is, the moisture, and all this other stuff. And a guy stood up and goes, well, you know, I used to have a vineyard, and, you know, X, Y, and Z. And he was asking things that I would have never thought of. And it's incredibly valuable for me as an investor to be able to have these other people, you know, pinging the entrepreneurs. Eric's talking to a guy named Steve Reich inside of the Pasadena Angels. Steve was part of the original management team of a company called LeisureLink. What Eric is doing is very closely related. So Steve's talking to Eric, and Steve's going to come back and say, Eric's got his shit together. He really knows what's going on. It's a, you know, it's plausible. Yeah, he is.
Okay, cool.
I saw that memo. So, you know, it gives the entrepreneur credibility, it gives them resources, and it gives the group some comfort. Thoughts? Yes, ma'am.
How do you know whose background is what in the Angels as far as if there's 100 just in Pasadena Angels, how would you find out what their background and what their specialty is and who to approach?
So the PasadenaAngels.com website has a membership section on it,
Okay.
and that'll give you some information. LinkedIn is a great resource.
But you would have to know that they were, do you guys have a LinkedIn for the Angels?
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
And so you can go to our membership page and look at the membership. You can also query LinkedIn, who's in the Pasadena Angels.
Okay.
And it's not 100%, but it's a representative sample.
Okay.
So
Just stock them on Google.
stock them on Google. Google's good.
Facebook.
Follow us on Twitter.
Mark, if I could just jump in real quick.
Yes, sir.
So one of the things we talked about on that conference call, I don't know who was on that conference call 2 months ago, was the gentleman on there. He found a value-added investor. It wasn't somebody who necessarily wrote a check, but they were actually able to help him build his business. And I want you to think about that, because as we talk more and more about crowdsourcing and the ability to crowdsource funding, we're now moving away from value-added investor into a spectrum of just literally getting a check from lots of people. And so what we're seeing now is a muddying of the water where, yeah, you can raise money, raise capital, maybe a little bit easier, but you're going to have people in your company that have never done this before, that might be a lot more needier than Bob and his team. And so it's not good and bad. Don't cross either one of them off. It's about understanding where your funding can come from and what fits you and your business. And that's the key point here about finding value. It's not just a check, but how to build your business. Because building a business is a lot harder and more challenging than it is when you just sit back in your armchair. It's really complicated. So having a great team, we throw that term around, right? That phrase, have a great team. But when you have a great team, man, the hurdles go down.
I have a question on that, because I keep reading that and hearing that your team is so important, and I look at the team and the team and the team and the team. And to me, that's like a record label who only talks to bands, not singers. And is there not a place for the solopreneur who will hire that team?
There is a place for solo entrepreneurs. Having a startup is incredibly hard. And I've found that there's absolutely no correlation between whether it's a team or an individual. It's a parameter. It's not black and white. It's just gray. It's different. And so what we're looking for, not so much in the team, is in the organization, in the company. Are you guys the ones to succeed? How are you, if it's you specifically or you as a team, how are you the winner? Right? How is it you that has the credibility, the wherewithal, the experience, the contacts to make this a winner? If it's you, that's great. If if you're Steve Jobs, you probably don't have a problem with that.
Right. I'm just
'Cause you're a
wondering
ghost.
why there's that bias. I just see it a lot and hear it a lot.
Part of the bias is because it's incredibly hard. And if you have a team, it seems that you have the ability to whether one person's up and one person's down. That would be my guess. I don't know that it's a hard and fast rule by any stretch of the imagination. Bless you.
I think it's easier when you have more people, only because you need somebody that can sell. You need someone that knows how to market. You need somebody that's doing the financials, and then to try to do all of that by yourself is really challenging.
So I will say the only thing there's two pieces that are critical in most startups. One is selling, and two is building the product. All the other stuff, accounting, legal, HR, I'm sorry, and I'm an IT guy, all that stuff is just stuff you should be able to contract out. And even the engineering side, how many of us go to Belarus for our programmers? It happens, but you need somebody to be able to technically design where you're going and see that vision. So if one person can do all that, great. That's few and far between. That's really, really hard. So that's kind of what, if you build a team, you can be the sole founder. If you have a CTO that has a small vested piece of the company, and is committed, but that's the person who's bringing on the technical side. But if you don't need that, if you can convince the investors that you're the one to do this because you have the wherewithal and the skills to do that, so be it.
Well, I guess my point would be, if I had the money, I would have a team. But I don't have the money, so I have me.
So one of the things entrepreneurs do really, really well is get people to work for them for free. It's incredible. Eric, how much you paying me tonight?
Get in line, Bob, the whole bunch of you.
So why I bring that up is I invested in a company called Adara. They go out to concerts and they record concerts, and as you walk out the concert, you can buy it on a flash drive. It's so cool. Ed's had me invested for about 4 years, and I put more hours in that startup than any other startup I've ever almost worked for. Because it's just so fun, and it's so fun to hang out and be there. And I'm an advisor, and yeah, I've got stock and I've got upside and everything. But he gets people to come in and participate and work with him for, if not free, almost free. The guys who started Pandora, at one point in time, they had 50 programmers working for free. They gave them pieces of stock, but not a tremendous amount. But they had them so vested in the culture and so vested in the upside that they were willing to do that. No? You're not buying it, are you?
No, I think you're right, because it's a lot easier to get somebody to do for something if they feel interested in what you're doing. But if you're trying to get somebody to work for free, but they're not interested in your project or don't see your vision, you're not getting anywhere with it.
And on the flip side, if you have to pay them,
Find those people
Yeah.
that are interested in
But
your
how
vision.
hard is that?
it's incredibly hard.
Extremely
Yeah, and the flip side is if they're not interested in your company, you're just paying them. You're going to get what you paid them, and that's it. And you know, if they're a programmer and you want to change, you're going to go, yeah, that's $50 an hour. Here's the change order.
No, but and on that topic, I mean, my first startup, it's an American-based virtual assistant company called My Virtual Little Helper.
Nice plug, by the way.
But I'm just saying, like, I totally didn't mean it as that.
Sure you didn't.
But I just want to explain what it is. Like, it's American-based outsourcing, and I literally found 5 people right out the door to start working for me for free, to go find their own clients, to work under me as contractors, to contract under my company, to bring me money so that they could work from home.
Did they have children and mortgages and they were the breadwinners?
Some of them.
It's a great market to get
But
resources.
they believed in the idea and being able to do something that they were specifically good at and doing it at home and having a company structure to manage all the other crap for them.
How many people here volunteer on boards? So I'm on the Measure V committee for Santa Clarita, spending money on schools. I'm on a board called NIFTY, which is Network for Teaching Entrepreneurship. You volunteer on these boards all the time. You do all this kind of community service. As an entrepreneur, one of the things that sets real good entrepreneurs apart is they can leverage that. So it's a tough skill. Sir?
I just wanted to comment. You know, we were looking at, if everyone knows what an accelerator is. You know, I used to be a single founder. You know, the non-techie guy. I couldn't even get accelerators to take a second look, no matter how good the idea was. But since I got a guy on board, it didn't matter if we even had chemistry or not. They were actually willing to take a second look with the tech person. And so you really got to explain the value proposition of your idea and create a prototype, just something really rough or visually for them, something to look at. So.
And somewhat depends on the product. The tech product, yes. You know, it's nothing you have to tangibly deliver. That's a good requirement. But if it's a consumer product or something like that, it's a little bit different.
Sure. Sure.
And that brings up a really good question. When you were talking about volunteering on a board, I can only imagine how many doors that would open. So where do you find the boards that you decide to volunteer on? Or do they just come to you because you're already out there?
No, you have to work pretty hard on it. It's truly an honor to be on the boards and stuff like that. I ended up teaching at SC because I was always there on campus doing this kind of pitch to the people at SC, and they finally said, well, come on and teach a couple classes. You can find boards all over the place. Anybody here on a board?
I have a couple small ones.
Okay. Do they need help?
Of course they do.
You can tell them what they are.
Right.
Yeah. Right? It's just that easy. Just start going out and hanging out.
No, I just see the concept of the relationship building, and also, you know, it definitely, if it's a startup, given that little free time, that pro bono work for that future project that you're working on.
When you're writing in the Santa Clarita magazine, right? Same thing, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Other questions?
No, I just wanted to cap that idea. I understand and empathize with the solopreneur. And I fought this idea of why do they want me to have a bigger team? And the more you get down the road, I think you'll start to understand why that's important. Where very few people will write a check to a guy, one guy and a bunch of dogs in a sled race. It just helps with the risk. Can this one individual handle everything that's about to come up in front of them? And you, as an entrepreneur, by the way, it's very difficult to get hired because there is no skill set like an entrepreneur. You're a different breed, you're crazy, a lot of you guys should be locked up, but you don't even understand what's ahead of you. I mean, there's so many challenges that even 2 months ago, I didn't even understand. And as long as you keep pushing down the road, you'll break down those doors, you'll hit your head, but you'll start to understand why the investor said no or they hesitated 6 months ago when you talked to them. And I don't know if that helps you at all. It's really just, it's kind of free-flowing from my head, but the idea of building a team is not just you and 3 programmers. It might be you and 3 people on your board that literally you can call once a month and say, hey, I got this challenge. And they just give you a half an hour a month. But if you build your team out and say, I'm aligned with this guy's a CEO here, he's a CFO here, and he's the director of marketing here, you now start to build beyond yourself because no one can do this on your own. Is that clear? Okay, I think we got the team thing down and why you won't bet on a single guy.
When you get people up at the Angel Investors Group in Pasadena, I've been speaking for a living for probably 28 years, getting paid to speak.
Now I'm
How
intimidated.
much of a percentage do you think the ability to articulate your ideas plays into
Fascinating question. Absolutely. I try really, really hard not to look at the performance, but to look at the actual content. One of the best lessons I've got out of the Pasadena Angels is pedigree doesn't matter. A Harvard MBA is a really, really impressive thing, but you know what? Those people don't succeed any more than a guy with an MBA from USC, or a guy who's
Or how about no MBA?
a guy who has no MBA. Check me if I'm wrong. Mark Zuckerberg didn't graduate from college. And who was the guy I saw the other day who did?
Bill Gates didn't either.
There's somebody who didn't graduate from high school. I forget who it was. Didn't graduate from high school, got diverted and just didn't do it. So pedigree doesn't matter at all. And so to your point, the other thing that I give a lot of credibility to, old white guy who speaks one language. When somebody gets up there and speaks in a different language and is trying to communicate to me in English, that means a heck of a lot to me. They're smarter than I am. By that nature that they have two languages, they're already smarter than I am. So I try and get past that, but I will tell you the first disposition is the very slick entrepreneur who's the salesman type guy that gets a lot of credibility. But one of my biggest losses inside the Pasadena Angels is a guy who did that. And you scratched underneath the surface, and I had all these questions. Well, wait, you're talking about having 12 SKUs, and I'm already counting 48 SKUs in your product line. How are you going to manage all those different SKUs? And he's gone, no, it'll be fine. Don't worry about it. And I go, oh, okay, it's such a great idea, and it flamed out. And so pedigree doesn't matter. The content is king on this one. The presentation has to be adequate, and you have to have thought about it. And again, if you take something away here, 12 months is the plan. 36 months out, you have to have 12 months is credible. 36 months out is a plan, and from there, it is what it is. Two quick last points. Just the accountant in me is going to make me say this about the balance sheet. So we talked about the income statement. We talked about the financial or the cash flow. The balance sheet. The only thing that's important on a balance sheet is what's called the cap table, the capitalization table. That's how much you own, and that's how much is going to be given out to the investors. It's really that simple. And so it ties in. It's all about revenue on the income statement. Your cash flow has to match what you're asking for the raise, and then your balance sheet has to be the cap table to say, this is how much I'm going to raise, this is how it fits in, this is how much of the company, the investors get, this is how much I get to keep. It's a lot more nuanced than that. Eric's got my contact information. If you guys want to talk to me about any of this stuff, I'd be happy to help. It's more than the money, whatever that means. I'd be happy to go over that and tell you guys what's going on. Quick wrap up. When you're asking for money, and say you're at the round numbers asking for $1 million, one of the things you have to be able to articulate is what risk does that solve? What valleys of death does that get me through as an entrepreneur? If Bob gives me $1 million, how is my company more valuable? It has to be more than $1 million or it's a net zero. So what does that $1 million do in terms of solving risk, creating value? How are you going to use that money? That's also called the use of funds. But I see a lot of companies just say use of funds, $1 million, $400,000 for working capital, $300,000 for technology, and $200,000 for marketing. Great. How does that make the company more valuable? If you can articulate that, I think you'll be much better off. When I'm investing in a company, I do look for those three things. It's a great team, it's a great product with a great market, and the last thing that you guys are going to hate to hear, it's a great deal for me. I do need to know how I'm going to make my 10x return. So those are the three things I'm looking for in a perfect storm for me. That's all I got.
for how long are you looking before you even invest?
So angels invest pre-revenue companies.
Pre?
Pre-revenue. It has to be a really good idea though, because one of those valleys of death is getting your first customer. And again, first customer, you can go out and get your first customer by paying them $1 to give you 80 cents. So if you get your alpha customer, you get your beta customer, you get some customer traction. Everybody familiar with the MVP concept, minimum viable product? Get it out, get it quick. You've got to get that customer feedback as soon as you get your, yes ma'am?
Well, what if you're just targeting really, really high-end companies, like very hard to get in? So it'd be like if you were an engineer and you had a great software that might